up. I'm happy to be in Bratislava, of all places in the world. I think I feel pretty safe here during this situation. And luckily, I'm not in quarantine, so I'm allowed to walk outside a bit, although I still refrain from meeting people and going shopping too much, which I refrain from anyway, even if it's not forbidden, because I don't like shopping. Yeah, anyway, our topic today is we go to Mars. Let me first of all tell you a little bit about myself. As Robert already said, I'm a PMI member, Project Management Institute Slovakia chapter. I'm actually the vice president for personal development in the chapter. I have 25 years of experience as a global project manager. And besides that, I'm also a trainer and coach for project management, intercultural competence, and leadership skills. And the latest addition to my collection of jobs is I'm a flight planner for an analog Mars mission at the Austrian Space Forum, which I'll be telling you a little bit more about today. So, the Austrian Space Forum is a research organization with mainly ordinary citizens participating in the research. We are more than 220 members at this time. We cooperate closely with the European Space Agency, also with SOSA, the Slovak Organization for Space Activities. And some of the main focus is on testing hardware that is like spacesuit simulators. These are not the real spacesuits, but spacesuits that simulate the conditions you would have in a spacesuit on Mars. We're also testing, in terms of hardware, rovers, like anything that rolls on the Mars surface. Also, we have some drone experiments in the meantime. In terms of research, planetary surface operations, that means geology. We take rock samples, sand samples, whatever we can find, and analyze them. Also optimizing remote science support, because only when we go to Mars, only a limited number of people will go. The majority of people involved in the research will be sitting on Earth and supporting the science team remotely. So this is actually, we always say we are now couch astronauts, all of us. We are simulating being in isolation on Mars. So if you feel bad about this, it's maybe it makes you feel better to know that you're a couch astronaut now. We do these international Mars simulations. We have a very big simulation coming up in the middle of October this year, where we pretend to go to Mars. We're actually going to the Negev desert in Israel, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And that's a very, very international team. We have people from Israel, from the Netherlands, from UK, from Italy, from Portugal, from the US. So it's a very, very international team of people working together. So first of all, what is an analog Mars mission? Well, we can't really go to Mars yet, but we need to prepare for the day we can actually go. So we simulate Mars missions. That is, we simulate psychologically being on Mars. That is by isolating people even more than they are now anyway, and by testing procedures. Yeah, how can we handle rovers? How can we handle communication between the mission control and the actual analog astronauts, as we call them? They're not astronauts actually going to Mars, but they look like astronauts. I can show you. I have one here. Nice pen. So we are looking for sites on Earth that are similar to Mars. So there have been expeditions in, for example, Rio Tinto in Spain, in some mountain regions in Austria, in some caves, and now we're going to the desert in Israel. The location is always selected by the necessity, by the type of experiments that we will be performing. This one of the main goals of this year's Mars simulation is to define procedures how we can detect life on Mars. So we found that the desert is suitable for that because we can dig into the sand and look what is there and test the procedures for analysis. Also, for example, test the procedures so that the samples we take are not contaminated by our own, for example, bacteria that, I mean, we are, as humans, we are home to millions of bacteria, so we might just shed something, and then when you go to Mars, you think you found a living bacteria, but it's actually a human one brought from Earth to Mars. So we are checking these procedures, how to avoid contamination. Which photo was taken on Mars? Any ideas? Left, right? I'm going to show you.
Right.
So the left one is actually taken on Mars. The right one is taken in the desert of Oman. So yeah, you see, you can't even tell the difference between Earth and Mars. Yeah. Now, obviously, there are some major differences between Earth and Mars. First and very important one is, of course, there is no wine on Mars, which makes it totally impossible for me to go there. But I have read an article. The Republic of Georgia is actually experimenting already to grow grapes on Mars. So we're already working on that problem. Mars has a lot less gravity than Earth. Mars is about 38% of the gravity that we have now. So if you weigh 100 kilos on Earth, you would only weigh 38 kilos on Mars, which is an alternative to dieting, obviously, if you want to lose weight. You're not too heavy, you're just on the wrong planet. Mars has also got a very thin atmosphere. It's only got like 1% of the density of the atmosphere we have here, and I don't know if anybody has been up on a high mountain, like 5,000-6,000 meters. It gets difficult to breathe because the air gets thinner, and on Mars it's even a lot thinner. It's only 1%, and we can't breathe the air on Mars because it's almost exclusively carbon dioxide. So there is no oxygen in there. Another fun fact is that Mars is currently the only planet in our solar system that is solely inhabited by robots. We have a couple of rovers there living on Mars and who have lived there for many years and do their work. This is kind of really peculiar that we have a planet, our neighbor planet, inhabited by robots. Mars has twice the number of moons than we have. Like it has two, we have one on Earth. They are also a lot smaller than our moon. What is a bit similar is the time a day takes. A day isn't the time the planet needs to rotate around its own axis. So on Earth, our day is like 23 hours and 56 minutes. This is why we have to have an extra day every now and again, and because we're not exactly 24 hours. And on Mars, the day is about 24 hours and 39 minutes. So it's pretty similar to ours. But there are main differences that make it kind of impossible for us at this time to live on Mars for humans. So we have to overcome a couple of obstacles first. So why do we do analog Mars missions? We need to study equipment behavior. Yeah, how can I steer a rover? How does a drone behave in the wind? Because Mars is quite windy. Things like that. How do we interact between humans and the rovers? We're also developing platforms for life detection. I mean, life, we're not looking for little green men, but for mainly bacteria that are living there now or have been living there in the past. Also, one of the goals of the mission is we want to become more visible. We want to advertise science, planetary exploration. We want to explain to the public why it's so important that we go on to other worlds and explore more than we do now. And also in this special mission, we are working on finding a optimum setup for the mission support center and cooperation between Earth and Mars. That is the guys who will be in the Negev desert. Yeah, my job in all of this is I'm a flight planner. The question is, of course, what does a flight planner do? In principle, a flight planner can be compared to a project manager. So we have different experiments that we're going to do during this analog Mars mission, and each experiment can be seen as a project in itself. So I, for example, I'm responsible for 3 projects. I have 1 psychological and 2 technical projects to take care of, and I manage them as I would manage any other project on Earth. Yeah. The mission in Israel is called Amadi 20, not because it's the 20th mission, but because it's 2020. And you can see on the left side the red icons. They represent what is going on Mars. We will have a habitat. I'm going to show you some photos later, and we'll have analog astronauts doing experiments. On the right-hand side, we have the Mission Support Center, where we, like myself and my colleagues as flight planners, as principal investigators, support each and every experiments and communicate through EarthCom. As we say, there is only one person who is allowed to communicate directly with the astronauts. So we're doing it the same as used to be in the Apollo program, for example. What is also interesting, we have a 10 minutes communication delay because Mars is so far away from us that even the communication signal takes 10 minutes to go there and another 10 minutes to go back. So if you ask a question, you will not have an answer before 20 minutes at least. So this is also something we are working on, how to best handle this. Yeah, so here I have a couple of of photos. This is the Amadi 18 from 2 years ago. It was in the desert of Oman. This is like the habitat as it would be on Mars. Looks quite nice in the sunset. And these are some of my colleagues who are doing some experiments. You can see they are wearing not real spacesuits, but spacesuit simulators. So, for example, if a spacesuit on Earth weighs 100 kilos, for example, it would only weigh 38 kilos on Mars. So those are a lot lighter. They're 2/3 lighter to simulate a little bit the difference in gravity. But other than that, they are equipped with a lot of sensors, so we can measure the astronauts' heart rate and body temperature. So if something goes off limits, we have a medical team to take care of the astronauts, for example. Yeah, here they're testing a rover. Some of the procedures we are testing is also how, for example, you need to change a battery in a rover, but you have 3 pairs of gloves on because you need to protect yourselves from the radiation and from the extreme temperatures. Yeah, how do you change a battery with all the gloves on? This is all things we have to test before we really go to Mars. Yeah, this is a Mission Support Center. It's currently located in Innsbruck, Austria, where we will sit throughout the mission, which will take 1 month from mid-October till mid-November, and where we communicate with the station in Israel and with other stakeholders, with the media, and with anybody who needs to be involved and whose information we need. Yeah. Questions now. I put my contact details, so if in case you have any questions afterwards.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Karin. And I'm not sure if there are already some questions from the audience. If not, I would start.
Does COVID-19 somehow influence Amadi 20? Yes, it does. We are pretty confident that we can still do the simulation as planned in Israel in the desert because, yeah, it's, I mean, in Israel, they don't have too bad a situation and we'll be out in the desert anyway. So we're pretty much confident that we can do, but we had a dress rehearsal planned for June that has been cancelled. And Marian, yes, yes, Ali can join if she wants to. Just ask her to contact me. When is planned trip to Mars? I think it's currently just wishful thinking when people say, oh, we're going to be there in the 2030s. I think the latest we're going to go there is in 2048, because Mars will then be especially close to Earth, which will cut the costs extremely.
Now, how do you simulate the food supply? Because are they going to bring everything there, or
yes.
What is the plan?
Yes, they will have the normal dried food that astronauts get. Mm-hmm. But it's since Apollo, the first people who went to the moon, the food, I hear, has improved significantly. It's actually quite tasty now from what people say who've been on these missions. Mm-hmm. What made you come to Bratislava? Yeah, I don't even know where to start. My gosh, the country is very beautiful. It's first of all, I like to live in small countries because you get more involved in everyday life. The weather is very nice. The people are extremely nice. Beautiful nature. Bratislava as a city is very nice, especially when the restaurants in the old towns are open and I can have a glass of wine there. Yeah, have my job responsibilities changed since? Yeah, my job responsibilities actually, they change every day. And I wouldn't have it any other way. As a project manager, you work on one job for a very limited amount of time, then you go on to the next project. So I'm a person who gets very, very easily bored. So I can also not work on just one job. I always need to have 2 or 3 jobs. And yeah, of course, my job responsibility changes, it develops. I take on more complicated or complex projects. Like this is also my first Mars project. And 10 years ago, I would not have thought that I'm going to participate in this. But here I am. So, are you sharing research results with NASA or similar? We are actually going to write a couple of scientific papers, and they will be published in magazines of planetary science, of physics, of astrobiology, of yeah, you name it, everywhere. So it'll be made publicly available not only to NASA, but NASA will of course also read this. It's interesting questions. Is it planned people will be born on Mars? Yes, I think we're getting there, but I don't think within this century. It's yeah, I mean, if you listen to Elon Musk, he has plans to shuttle 1 million people there to really settle on Mars, but we don't know at the moment when this is happening. There have thousands of people have already signed up to go there. So let's see what happens and when it will happen. Will there ever be planet B? Yeah, it's we basically have 2 options. We can what they call terraform Mars. We have on Earth over the past couple of decades, we have collected extensive experiences how we can use CO2 to heat up our planet. Now Mars is full of CO2. I'm sure we will manage to terraform Mars as well to make it warmer and more habitable. And people are already, a lot of scientists are actually already experimenting. Yeah, what kind of trees could be the first ones to grow on Mars? What kind of other plants, vegetables, etc. Cotton seeds look very promising. Although I don't know in how far you can actually eat this. The second option we have, which I see also as quite realistic, we could Mars form people. We have a lot of options to change our DNA already. So I don't think it's completely fiction if we think that we could actually genetically engineer humans to be able to breathe the CO2 on Mars and actually extract the oxygen from the CO2 or something like that. So it is an option, and I think both ones are equally likely or unlikely, however you see it. So how is all these projects financed, taking all the habitat, travel, and communication? So it's a combination. We get money from kind of organizations like the European Space Agency. There is government money, but there are also companies who want us to do their experiments, so they pay for that. So it's a bit of a mix of different sources for financing. And what's your opinion about life on Mars? If that question means if I want to live on Mars, no way. I cannot live with more than 2 weeks without being able to go outdoors or open the window. For me personally, it's just not an option. I would just go totally crazy. But there are a lot of people who want to go to Mars and who want to live there, but it's not me. I stay with mission control on the ground.
Yeah, there is a question from Maria, like how many nationalities, but I also want to know how many people there are.
We have 6 analog astronauts.
Uh-huh.
In total, yeah, I can't count the nationalities. We must be about 30 different nationalities on the team. And yeah, there is at least 50 or so, 60 people involved. It depends whom you count. I mean, we have obviously people who relate to the media, who will not be on site, but will still contribute to the project. You have the IT support team. So it's quite a sizable team with many nationalities. So.
Okay, and if somebody from our listeners would like to join, what should they do?
If you're really interested in joining, but it's not as glamorous as it looks like. We're still looking for a couple of people for the Mission Support Center in Innsbruck from mid of October till mid-November. But those are volunteers, so you work very hard, you don't get paid, but you'll be a hero.
Okay, last question from Martina Slobodova, and we will have a break.
Yeah, government reasons for funding. Yeah, I mean, the government is, of course, interested in general progress and innovation because the future is or part of our future is in space. And governments are obviously very interested in pushing a country's innovative capacity. So that's why they give money. So is Russia?
Okay, last question. Yeah.
So no, I mean not the Russian government anyway. No.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. This was really interesting. And now let's have a 5 minutes break. So if you